o'clock, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling to order our working and briefing session of the Duncanville City Council and our meeting for October 20th, 2020. We're starting with the briefing session exactly on time. In accordance with an order of the Office of the Governor issued March 16th, 2020, as extended by the Office of the Governor on June 12th, 2020, the City Council for the City of Duncanville will conduct City Council regular meetings and briefing sessions by video conference on Tuesday, October 20th to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, calling social distancing in an effort to slow the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. This is an open meeting conducted by video conference. However, there is no public access to a physical location. So a recording of the video will be made available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act upon written request. So audience is in listen only mode. However, citizens who register to speak, I understand we do not have any. Moving on, each council member must use the raise your hand option in Zoom or physically raise their hand like so if you need to speak. And the city secretary will help me in recognizing those who wish to speak. So it's either raise your hand or do that physically so we can catch it and allow you to speak. Votes will be by roll call by the city secretary, and she will be calling each person's name, and you can state if you are for or against the item being voted on. Okay, so moving on to the agenda items. First thing that we have on the agenda is for the city manager to discuss the consent items. I will note we have 15 consent items tonight, which means our briefing session could be quite long, depending on the situation, any questions that we might have. Also, we have a very, very full schedule tonight with an executive session. So keeping that in mind as we work through these items would be very, very helpful. So city manager, if you would go ahead and work through the consent items, appreciate it.
Sure. Mayor, members of council, before you have, as the mayor mentioned, a number of consent items. First, item A is your minutes from special council meetings held on in August on the 26th and 31st. Item B is a resolution approving the terms and conditions of professional services agreement with Pacheco Coke. The purpose of this agreement is for them to provide bidding and grant management services as we go through the Green Ribbon project for US 67. As you may recall, we were awarded $1.5 million worth of grant monies for the beautification project along 67. One of the important things to note, however, is that after we had applied and after we've been awarded, the state changed the terms, if you will, as far as the monies that were being awarded. When we applied, originally the idea would be that TxDOT would handle the letting of the project for the landscape improvements. And also too, that the monies will be coming directly from the state. What has changed is they are now requiring a local let and that they're utilizing federal dollars. So the use of the federal dollars complicates and makes it a much more arduous process when you go through the grant monies. And so we have to make sure that those are accounted for. And also for the fact of the matter that we're having to do a local let, which means that we are going to be bidding out in conjunction with Cedar Hill, those projects. And so this is for Pacheco Coke to make sure that we're staying and adhering to the grant codicils and again, handling the project management aspect of it when it comes to bidding this out. These monies are being reimbursed. At least 60,000 of the dollars are being reimbursed, with only 6,000 having come out of our street fund. And so that is what this item is about. Item C is the Meadow Creek Bagwall Erosion Program. As you may recall, in your last agenda, we had this item on the agenda. We received a question from the low bidder that required us to pull this item and to deal or to handle the questions that came up from the low bidder. Those were resolved. What we were able to find out is that they did not have the experience to handle a project of this scope. And so that bid has been rejected because they didn't have the requisite experience. And so we're recommending award of this project tonight, erosion control, for the amount of $166,000. And as you recall too, at your last meeting, you did approve the pipe construction that would be part of this project. So it's a overall project for the bag wall and drainage concerns off that Meadowbrook area. Item D is the resolution agreement between the City of Duncanville and Dallas County. This is for the, this agreement is for highway accident investigation services that the Dallas County Sheriff's Office provides on both I-20 and US 67. They provide the accident investigation services. This is a contract that we've had for quite some time. There is no increase in this contract, and so this is for 1 year for the amount of $59,000. It provides relief to our police officers so that they can continue to answer calls within the city, and their time is not being taken up by handling any kind of accident issues that are along 67 or 20. Item number E is the cooperative purchasing agreements for Vortex Infrastructure Holdings. This is for the continuation of our pipe bursting program for the amount of $996,000. Accompanied with this agenda item is a map that indicates the various areas within the city that we will be that will have the project or the pipe bursting project going on in the various areas where they go in there, remove or burst the pipe, and then replace the pipe so we can reduce the number of SSOs into the system. And again, this is for award amount of $996,000. Again, they're in various areas within the city as exhibited in Exhibit A as part of this agenda item.
Mr. Frederickson, I'd like to interject here. I'd like to commend our city in the overall city council and public works for this particular item, for its sustainability for the infrastructure of our city. I know there are many cities around that are deferring this type of work and deferring this amount of money because they don't think it's necessary, or they're trying to be too lean. But we're doing the right thing, and I commend our city for doing this to take us into the future so our infrastructure can handle what's necessary. As I said, this is a big ticket item, but absolutely essential and necessary. So thanks to you and our city council and public works staff for working this. It's really, really necessary. Thank you.
Well, we certainly appreciate the support of the council and their policy direction to move forward with taking care of these deferred maintenance items. Thank you, Mayor. Continuing on, item F is a agreement through Grand Prairie Interlocal Cooperative Agreement with Curto to provide mill and overlay services for the city of Duncanville, an amount of $150,000. Again, as associated with this agenda item, there's a map that indicates the various areas within the city that will receive these services for mill and overlay. Again, as we talked about it with the previous pipe bursting item, the initiative to again take care of our aging infrastructure, maintaining our streets, and this is part of that program. Item G is a purchase for personal computer hardware related equipment. This is basically for our virtual servers. As you know, our virtual servers house a lot of our various software systems throughout the city, such as ERP and many other systems. So this is part of the replacement program for that, for those systems. Again, those systems usually last about 7 years when we have to come back and replace those various server systems for the city to house all the different various softwares that we have.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to interject once again. I noticed in the package that these servers are at 90% capacity.
Yes.
A standard industry benchmark on capacity for any piece of computer hardware is at 90%. It's critical, and that's the future for breakdown and disruption in service. So I know that our folks are looking at that, and this is why we're doing this at the 90% mark. Anything else beyond that, we start working into a pretty red zone in terms of the possibility of a breakdown, failure, and so forth of the hardware. So thanks to our IT guys for keeping track of this at the 90% mark. I know you're going to get into H, I, J, K, and M, and I want to say something before you get to those. Items H, I, J, K, and M are all monies coming from the CARES Act. And so I want to inform our city and in those, in council as well, that all of these, these are big ticket monies. If you add them up, it's a shade under $1 million. It's about $980 some odd thousand for these particular 5 items. However, this is CARES Act money. So Mr. Frederickson did respond to Mr. Harvey earlier today with an email about where these monies are coming from. So we've got about $1.47 million that's available to take care of this kind of stuff. So as Mr. Frederickson works through these items, please keep that in mind. That Dallas County, I guess you're going to talk about it, Mr. Frederickson. You know, Dallas County has already approved these monies, so for coming from the CARES Act. So it's very essential. There we go. I just wanted to preface these items for you. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And again, I do want to give a quick shout out to Ms. Tia Pettis, who's on here. She's our Assistant Finance Director. She and her staff have done a great job really negotiating, or not negotiating, but navigating through the issue of the CARES Act, keeping up with the different direction that we do get from the county. They have a very good working relationship with the county. So I do want to give a shout out to her and her team because a lot of it is also the compliance. And as you mentioned before, these items have been approved by the county that they qualify for CARES Act funding. As you recall, we were not able to utilize all the CARES Act monies that were allocated to us. Again, a lot of those monies were being forwarded to the Business Assistance Program. If they were to be needed, the county called off the 4th call of projects. They did not utilize those. They did not have the demand that they thought they would. And so these are monies that the county basically said that we can come back to the city to utilize them, but we have a very strict time frame to utilize these monies. They have to be used by November, or they go away, or we have to reallocate them. I could reallocate them public safety or what have you in some other regard. But again, there's a definite time limit on each of these. So I'll go through on item H. This is with Ring Central for Cloud PBX. PBX is our telecommunications data system. What this will allow us to do, so let me just preface by saying during COVID, we learned a lot of things that we basically could not provide service-wise. One of those things was the teleporting of telephones. So when we had to close City Hall and move our services out, only a few people within each of the sections or departments were able to get calls transferred to them. So we had a little bit of a blip when it came to those service deliveries. I think we did a very good job. However, we were not able to fully utilize all the staff when we were having to send them home. This will provide us to be able to transfer those numbers to other numbers and provide those services uninterrupted. And again, we're talking about these in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, but these are also services that can be used for other emergencies as well. And so obviously the pandemic is a declared natural disaster. But like anything else, we could have other disruptions in there. And so this will help provide an easy transition. So if we had to move services or provide continuity of services, this would be one of those items that can provide that ability to be able to move and teleport those calls over to another location. Item I is digital resources. This is going to allow us to take each of the rest of the remaining conference rooms and digitize those so that we can have multiple meetings in each of those areas. We do not have those capabilities now, and as we have discovered with Zoom or what have you, one of the issues we've always had was like for hybrid meetings, for example, or being able to have distant meetings with other outside groups and so forth, so that we can reduce and limit contact. As you know, we have many of our conference rooms are very small in essence, and so we can only limit so many people in there. This will allow us to have the same kind of abilities that we're doing here with Zoom or what have you, where we can have these hybrid or these various meetings within the context of other City Hall, Service Center, the conference room over at the recreation center and also at the fire station. So this will enable us to be able to have those conference abilities. Councilmember Stokes, did you?
I did. Hey, Paul. So I'm glad to see the technology that's allowed us to kind of catch up a little bit with technology. The question I have though, is there anything that will also the citizens will be impacted with, the citizen can use technology-wise, such as perhaps instead of them having to fill out something, we have an iPad for them to sign or whatever. Any technology from a citizen standpoint that will be affected that we could use with this?
Well, I think what it'll enable them to do is they don't, if there's any reason that they don't want to come into City Hall and, and again, they don't feel comfortable. I mean, we do have those services available where they can do things online. So they can do bill paying online. They can do some of those limited things with, like, for example, the building inspection office and so forth. And actually with our ERP system, we're going to enable more of that ability to have online. So we're doing those things now to kind of provide that. But, when they want to still have a face-to-face or at least the ability to see the person, but they don't feel comfortable coming into City Hall, this will allow for those kinds of meetings. And so, yes, I think citizens or any kind of outside group that wants to do any business with the city of Duncanville, this will at least help them. Where they kind of feel like I want to see the person I want to meet with, but I also don't feel comfortable. They can't leave their house or whatever that reason would be. So this is certainly now allowing that capability.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Item J is for. So as I mentioned before, when we had to close City Hall, only just a handful of people have laptops that they were able to take home and that they could then utilize internet services to get back into our system. Really, mainly key members of the executive team had laptops. And so what we found is the remaining staff were only using desktops. Those desktops run around $3,000 for replacement costs. And what we're proposing in this item is that we would replace those desktops with similar laptops that can be ported when that's necessary. So not only will you see reduced, what this item will now enable us, and it'll go to the next item, it'll enable us to reduce the cost of having to replace those desktop units, and then also provide, again, that portability. Like I talked about with the phone system, this would be portability with the computer system, where they then can work from home if they had to, and be able to tie into our server system and access, whether it's courts and being able to access those records, utility billing, building inspection, code enforcement. They would be able to get into those systems, provide those services, answer the calls. And so that this would allow for that portability. Again, as I mentioned, those were one of the lessons learned from the pandemic, that we were very limited when people went home. So we would have to loan out laptops. We only had, I think, a handful that we were able to loan out. So when, our offices were closed, only one person could utilize that laptop. So it limited that kind of interface and ability to visit with customers and help them out, especially with bill paying and so forth. So what this does is, by switching to this type of computer, lowers the cost of having to use desktops. Ms. Jamison?
Yeah, I kind of wonder, I'd like to ask the city attorney about, that kind of raises flags about being able to access the city from your home, and you're going down below the staff level on liability with information.
I'm not sure that I understand your question as far as accessing or having availability of staff to respond to an inquiry.
It's not staff. You said staff had it. It was people below staff.
Well, no, I'm talking about staff. What I was saying is the executive team were the only ones that had the ability to do remote access, or if we had to loan a laptop. But the staff are the same staff that have access now when you go to City Hall and inquire, like if you're paying a ticket or you're paying a water bill. What we weren't able to do is allow them then to work from home. So if they got inquiries, calls, or what have you, they weren't able to, we only had one person that could get into, access that remotely. So when we had to close City Hall, we didn't have the ability, with the exception of one or two people within, various divisions. So the same staff that has access to those records now would have the same access remotely. So they just weren't able to do it remotely because we only use.
You're not going below the staff level.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yeah, I'm sorry. I may have misspoke. Yeah, this only staff would have these devices. And so what we're taking basically is the laptop that they use in their work environment now and move that. And then if we said we had to close City Hall, again, they wouldn't be able to take it home. They would only do it on occasions where we said City Hall needs to be closed, or we have an emergency where it would require us to have to work remotely. Like if we had a disaster or something happened at City Hall, for example, and we had to move offices somewhere else, with the virtual environment and with these systems, we could still have continuity of service. But it wouldn't be below, it would be a staff member that this would be for a staff member.
Okay,
But
and it
be able
does,
to take it home. No.
it's not including like, I'm sorry, I don't know the acronyms, TECLA and the national group, whatever.
No, only staff members, and only just for again, I'm just trying to think, again, I usually keep using the example UB or utility building or court systems, inspections, HR, whatever, anybody that has a desktop system, we would replace it with this at a lower cost, but then it would be able to be ported if we had that. But only when we allowed that to happen. They wouldn't be taking it home with them all the time unless we had an emergency where we had to close the facility. But only staff members would be using this. This would not be assigned to a non-staff member at all.
Yeah, as far as security of the system, I think maybe what she's asking, like for sensitive information like police records or other things, that's not an issue because it is secured and it couldn't be accessed outside. So,
and they're secured now.
I think that's what she was driving.
Is that what? Okay,
Yes.
I apologize. I was misunderstanding. Yeah, the attorney's correct. So for example, with CJIS kind of materials that are law enforcement, you wouldn't have access to them anyway. So they would not have access unless they were already allowed to have access.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. And that is extremely important. I think Councilmember Jameson brings up a good question. I mean, we are not foregoing the security. So I think that's a good point to bring up, that we would not forego that security issue with any of our staff. So thank you for asking that.
Mr. McBurnett?
Thank you, Mayor. And I do want to comment, that's something that's going on at the state level as well as the portability. Desktops are getting replaced by iPads or laptops and that such, so that people, when there are emergencies or something, can work continuously and without disruption in service. Thank you.
Thank you. And then item K is the $450,000, which is the hardware-related equipment. This is what creates the cloud and the ability to do all these things. And so the previous item, for example, we would not be able to have that portability unless we are able to purchase this virtual desktop infrastructure so that they could go out and be able to log into our system. And so without that, we wouldn't be able to do these other things. So I know it's a larger ticket item, but this is what creates that environment for us to be able to go and port all this equipment. And so that's what kind of wraps all this up. Okay. Item I, apologize, I'm squinting because I, of course, left my glasses. This is to engage TriStem to perform a contingency-based audit for a 911 fees. As you may recall, I believe it was a couple of council meetings ago, we engaged the same company to look at our franchise fees. So we've engaged them to do that. We wanted to engage them to also look at our 911 fees. As you may recall, when we participate with the Southwest Regional Dispatch Service. And so some of the, one part of the revenues that go to support that endeavor, which is, a cooperation with both, with Duncanville, Cedar Hill, and DeSoto. is that we pledged our 911 fees to go as part of that revenue. What we've been seeing trend-wise is that as people begin to in essence, get rid of their landlines, you're starting to see a decrease in those revenues. But what we want to make sure, and that's just a natural trend, which we understand. However, we want to make sure, though, that we're also not having 911 fees that are being misallocated, that we're not getting credit for. And so we're asking for this audit to take place so that we can just make sure and understand that we are actually realizing the 911 fee revenues that we should be getting. Because otherwise, as those 911 fees continue to decrease, we have to then support that with increased general fund revenues to support the regional dispatch system. So this is extremely important for us to make sure that we're getting the monies that we should be receiving from those carriers, and to make sure that they're being allocated to Duncanville.
Mr. Frederickson, I don't know if you're going to hit on it, but before you move on, I think the way I understood it, if you could help me make sure I understood it correctly, is that the contract provides for them to go after these monies and they get paid 30% of what they recover.
Right. 30% of what they recover up to 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's no out of pocket for us.
Right, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Item M is a resolution cooperative purchase for mobile computer hardware related equipment for our police vehicles. Again, this is going to be replacing those mobile data terminals and those computers that are used with our police officers. They are beginning to end their lifespan. However, this system, again, utilizing CARES Act, will provide for us to be able to sanitize these computers more properly without ruining the computers. It also provides for dictation services. And so what that will enable us to do is, as opposed to patrol officers having to come back in and type out reports, this will keep them out on the streets, providing them to complete those reports in a much quicker fashion and staying out on the streets. Again, providing services for citizens. And so that is for this item at $140,000 to replace each of those computer systems and related equipment within each of our police vehicles. Item N is the consideration of an ordinance for a negotiated settlement with the Atmos Cities Steering Committee and Atmos Energy. As you know, the Atmos Cities Steering Committee is a coalition of member cities that basically represent the cities and their citizens in not only watching and auditing and looking at numbers that are being provided by Atmos Energy, making sure that they're fair, that when they look at the GRIP and the other asks for the company, that they're actually reasonable costs that Atmos is asking to pass on. So this is part of that settlement. This is something you see almost on a yearly basis. And so this is a result of those negotiations between the steering committee and Atmos Energy. And finally, item O, which is a resolution. Give me one sec here as I go to that. Okay, this is a resolution for our VNA Senior Meal Program. Again, this program has been utilized most certainly due to the COVID pandemic. It's been very successful. We are able to provide meals to a number of seniors needing those meals. We provide that on a daily basis. This is for an extension of the monies for this fiscal year and for next, and also authorizes the contract for the next fiscal year, 2021, in the amount of $200,000 to provide those meals. And again, these are monies that are reimbursed through the Department of Agriculture. So this is through that grant program.
Hey, Paul, did we see a large increase during COVID time for those meals?
We did.
And so the difference from this year over the last year, remember what it was or what it is?
Well, as you remember, we actually had to come to the council, I believe, a couple of months ago, maybe a little bit longer, to ask for an increase due to the demand that we were seeing. So it certainly is an increased demand. So we were able to get additional funds for that. Council had to approve that increase. Again, the demand has not let off, and so we're asking for additional funds, again, that are being reimbursed, and then also funds for next year's program. But yes, we saw a market increase in the utilization of this due to COVID, and also too, with not understanding or not knowing when that may let up. It's been a very successful program for our seniors.
Now remind me, when it let up, then we only serve who attends the senior center at that point.
Well,
right?
that's correct. And one of the things to keep in mind is, especially during the weekdays, demand basically doubled during the day. So we had demand from when we were pre-COVID and providing those meals at the senior center to, again, having to close the senior center and provide the meals where they would come and pick those up. And again, staff are wearing gloves, masks, social distancing. Again, they're being given to those persons in their motor vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and with that, it's working back in memory. I'd like to give a shout out to Noel Garcia and his staff at the rec center, because when we went into COVID, those seniors that were unable to get their meals anymore, I remember when this first happened in March, one of the very first things on our agenda was how to take care of those seniors through the VNA and getting them meals. And it was very, very top priority for us because of our seniors that needed those meals. So this is a continuing need in our city and taking care of those folks for us.
And I think I misspoke, Councilmember Cooks. You were asking a question about the demand also too. I failed to mention, I said weekdays, the demand has doubled, but we're also providing those meals on weekends as well. We've started that service.
Okay, so that concludes running through the consent items. Thank you very much, Mr. Frederickson.
Sorry it took so long.
No. I mean, it's a lot of work. We got getting a lot accomplished, and that's taking care of what our citizen needs are. So thanks very much. There's a lot of stuff here. Moving on to item number 2. Yes, Ms. Jameson.
Oh, nothing. I forgot we were in briefing.
I'm sorry. Say again.
I said, I forgot we were in briefing. I was going to move to approve and move on.
Yeah, we're still in the briefing session. I know. Yeah.
She's ready to go.
Ready to go.
Very good. Thanks. Okay. So now we're going to item number 2 in our briefing presentations. First item A, is discussion of the 2015 International Fire Code. And this is Fire Marshal Steve Wakeland. Mr. Chief Wakeland, you there?
Mayor, may I just really quick, before Steve begins, this is an item that I asked for the fire department to brief. One of the things that continues to come up and at least percolate up even to the manager's office is we still have a number of buildings within Duncanville, older buildings, mind you, built prior many times to this updated fire code that does not have sprinkler systems in them. And so what happens is, because they don't have the sprinkler systems, they come, they may be a building with multiple suites or what have you. They come to our desk, bring the CO, and then they are given the unfortunate news that they need a sprinkler system because the building owners have not put those in. So we wanted to brief the council just to kind of bring them up to date of kind of the challenges that we're dealing with, because what happens is, as opposed to, when they get the bad news, it translates into staff as being uncustomer service oriented, they're not being friendly, and what really is happening is we're having to give them and be the bearer of bad news because these sprinkler systems are very costly to have to install, especially in existing buildings. So we want to bring this to council's attention more than anything else to kind of explain some of the situation that we're having to see, and also if there's any feedback that council may provide. I don't want to steal Mr. Wakeland's thunder, but yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious because I have noticed that too on a building that was purchased, and suddenly they had to have a very expensive equipment installed. And so my question is, why was it not flagged with the previous owner? Why is it that it changes when the owner changes?
That's a very good question. If I may, let him begin, because I think that's a relevant question that please come back to that.
Okay.
That may, I don't know if that'll be answered, but I think it's a question that's kind of the feedback, if you will, that we're going to need. If that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, as part of the presentation, it is spelled out here in just a little bit. Again, my name's Steve Wakeland. I'm the fire marshal. I was just asked to speak tonight just to cover sprinklers and the requirements for our city buildings. I just want to start off by saying that in the amount of time, the amount of information from the International Fire Code, the International Building Code, NFPA, and our ordinances, there's just no way that we can cover every circumstance. So we'll touch on as much as we can. Slide 2, please. Back up one. There we go. We're objectives tonight were just to review the 2015 International Fire Code for sprinklers for new and existing construction. And then we'll discuss the occupancy types and uses. And then we'll talk about our fire code issues that we are encountering at this time. Next slide. So new construction, IFC, IBC, NFPA, and our ordinances all have specific wording. As a city, we can modify and or amend the wording to meet our specific ordinances. Case in point, in the International Fire Code states that new construction of 5,000 square feet or greater shall have a sprinkler. So any building that's built brand new, 5,000 square feet or greater. In 2017, our staff met and asked for a change to the city ordinance, and it was amended to say 6,000 square feet or greater for new buildings. They will require a sprinkler. After hearing the amendments from COG and reviewing our city ordinances our city buildings, it was decided that these numbers reflected better the type of use of buildings in our city. So DeSoto has gone to the 2018 IFC. Again, we're under the 2015. DeSoto has gone to the 2018 IFC, and they are requiring sprinklers for 6,000 square feet or greater. Cedar Hill is still with the 2015, but they amended their new construction for 9,000 square feet. So like I said, the wording can be changed, amended, how the city feels that it needs to go. Be aware that there are exceptions to these requirements due to the type and use of each building under 6,000 and under 10,000 square foot limits. So that was new construction. In our existing buildings, the IFC advises existing buildings of 12,000 square feet or greater that they have a sprinkler, or, and this is, I think, to answer your question, if there is a change of use, a change of owner, or the hazard has increased regardless of the square footage. So if there's a change of use and it's 10,000 square feet, or the hazard has grown or changed.
Go to the next slide, please.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say next slide. Okay, thank you. There we go. This is the 12,000 square feet. Duncanville City Ordinance 90539, they amended it to say 10,000 square feet. After looking at the same thing that they did for the first part, they kind of judged that our buildings are somewhere around the 10,000 square foot range. And so they amended it to 10,000 square feet or greater would have a sprinkler. And then same thing, if the change of use or hazard has increased, just regardless of the square footage, it could be required to have a sprinkler. Next slide, please. So in our occupancy types in the IFC, IBC, there are 10 divisions. You can see them: assemblies, business, education, all the way down to miscellaneous. These are for the next, go to the next slide. So when we go out in our multi-use occupancy buildings, any one or more of those classifications could be in a strip center, and you see these a lot. Our code requirements depend on the type of occupancy, the use, and the square footage of the building. So as you can see, we see several of these buildings that have single addresses lined up. So this is a 700 block, and you would see 702, 704, 706. And with that being said, they're divided into smaller groups, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 square foot buildings, when actually that whole strip center is all under one roof, and it's just under 133,000 square feet. So the strip center to the left there is the one that feeds around all the way to the Winco. So if you're looking at it, you can see the multiple uses that are in there. You got a bar or a restaurant at the end, you got a tobacco shop, you got a tailor. On around, you got a daiquiri bar. You had another restaurant that just went out of business, and then you got the Winco that's even further around. Only about a third of that business under 133,000 square feet is sprinkled. So from the Winco back around to the daiquiri bar and maybe one or two more is sprinkled. So with that being said, the next building over to the left is the old Callaway's. It is just at 10,000 square feet. There's 4 occupancies in there. They have been built. There's a barbershop, a furniture store, a pet store, and a food store. That building is sprinkled, and you can see that with the 4 units being just under 10,000 or right at 10,000 square feet, they are all protected. These other building, the building to the left is not as protected. Like I said, only about a third of it. So we have had several fires in strip centers that were not sprinkled, and not only the unit involved in the fire area was damaged, but several others were closed due to smoke and fire damage and firefighting activities. So just one of the things to think about is if one unit closes, you know, you're losing revenue for that. But when we have to close the buildings 2 and 3 to each side of that fire unit, you're losing revenue from multiple occupancies. Next slide, please. So the strip center that's in the center there, you're looking at the front of the building. You've got a beauty shop, a clothing store, another beauty shop, and then to the far right, which is not in the picture, is a vacant spot that's requesting to put in a church. What you can't see is, if you look at the picture to the left, is the auto repair shop that is connected to the back of where the church wants to go. So if you're looking at those, the church would require, because it's an assembly, the church would require a sprinkler, but also the auto repair would require a sprinkler. And if you look at the square footage of the buildings, which I provided there with DCAD, it's just under 12,300 square foot. And so with each one of these, with the church and the auto repair being back to back, that building should be sprinkled. This is what we're running into. It's not sprinkled now. Next slide. So occupancy type and usage is a big part of how we label our buildings. So just a few: you got daycare, you got storage, you got educational, you got auto repair. Each has its own set of requirements. And then, so not all of our elementary schools have sprinklers. The 3 newest ones are sprinkled, the high school sprinkled, but some of our elementary, which now under the new code would require sprinklers for kindergarten through 12th grade. The type and use need to match for sprinkler requirements. If these are standalone buildings like the phone sales, or they wouldn't need a sprinkler. A garage, maybe, depending on if it was around anything else. And then churches, yes, they're assemblies and they require sprinklers, sorry. But if you, oops, sorry, Mayor. I see you waving.
Yeah, Steve, talking about the schools, that's a shock. What kind of communication has gone on between you and the schools to get them sprinkled?
Well, we can't go back, and once these schools have been built, because they've been built for so long, we can't just go back in and say, oh, you've got to sprinkle your schools.
Okay.
So anything moving forward, you know, from now on being built, Yes, they have to be sprinkled.
So those schools are grandfathered then. So,
Well, I hate to use that word.
yeah, but then, well, they're being allowed to continue to operate without sprinklers.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
I would then presume that our fire department has some kind of somewhere in our system that all of our firefighters know that those facilities, if anything occurs, is going to be a more dangerous environment for them without sprinklers if some kind of emergency does occur at one of those schools.
That is correct, and our guys know that. I mean, it's a life safety issue. They're gonna do everything they can to get those kids out of there. Teachers also. So the good thing about it is our schools do have alarm systems, so we have early activation for the to get an alert, but it just doesn't have any kind of sprinkler system to help us to deter the fire until we can get there and help them put it out.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
hang on just a second. Mayor, this is Greg Chase. This kind of alludes to what Ms. Jameson was talking about a while ago. If they were built at a time that they did not require a sprinkler system, then they can stay like that unless they change ownership, go under like a 50% renovation, change of use or something like that. When that occurs, that triggers that sprinkler system. So if that school, that elementary school, decided to renovate more than half the building, they would be required to put in a sprinkler system. So I think that's what Ms. Jameson was alluding to a while ago. Why did that trigger that? There's guidelines that the existing buildings use to trigger a different use that triggers those different requirements of an alarm system, a sprinkler system, exit doors, and things like that. It's not just all about a sprinkler system itself, but that's what triggers those things. And each usage has a different trigger, or maybe not a different one, but they have varying triggers that require that stuff.
Okay.
But let me come back, Mayor, too, and thank you, Chief Chase. I still want to come back to Councilmember Jameson's point, though, because I think one thing that we might want to talk about is some of these buildings that we know may come in that are grandfathered now or that we know are vacant. We may want to start notifying those owners. So we do need to talk about that at some point so that we can kind of at least take care of the surprise, if you will, when they come in and go, oh my gosh, I've got to do this. So I just still want to come back to that. But thank you, Greg.
And they could, if we told them in advance before they sold the building, they could maybe recoup some of their money through what they're asking for the property. So that wasn't a surprise. I mean, the person who's buying it, part of the value is the system that's been installed.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry, who's responsible, the owner or the person renting the building?
Ultimately, the owner is responsible for it, but I mean, it depends if they're going to try to put the onus back on the tenant or not. But again, the owner's going to be responsible.
Okay.
They're really expensive. I don't know how they can make a renter pay for it. What do y'all have? Can you give us some ideas about how much these systems are? I mean, I've talked to some of the people who put them in. They're very expensive.
The problem with giving you a number is that it all requires on the square footage of the building. And
right.
So you can't just come to you and say, well, it's going to be $10,000, $12,000, it all depends on the size of the building. If you're, going to sprinkle Winco as opposed to, I'm just going to say a restaurant, it's going to be totally different.
I think we have, though, the Economic Development Board has given money. I can think of a building that they gave a grant to. And I can't remember. I think it's about 60,000.
Yes, ma'am. It was 70,000, and that was the GK Steel building over there behind Masco. Yes, ma'am.
So I want to say something about the cost. My little office building is 5,000 square feet. 2,500 square feet downstairs and 2 apartments upstairs. And it cost me $75,000 to put the system in that I was required to put in here in Duncanville. It has a complete standpipe system. It has its own water outside. It's $15 a square foot. And, you can't build, that will prohibit buildings being built, small buildings being built in our area with that kind of cost. And, it's like there's nothing that goes on. It doesn't make sense to me sometimes because it's like an office building. Nothing goes on in an office building. It's less than an apartment. It's less than a house. You don't cook. You don't do anything. It's office, and so some of these things, I would like to know things like, what are kind of the statistics in Duncanville? If we had any fatalities in 10 or 15 years, when's the last time we had a fire fatality? Because we need to come up with some other solutions that are not so harsh. And because it seems like our code here is more harsh than any other city that I work in. And it seems like it's not only the national code, but our own stuff we've added on to it. And, I don't know if we can talk about that, or I'd like to know, I'm not against, I think new buildings it ought to be more of a standard to put fire sprinkler systems in, but some of these old buildings, there's just no way to make them work right now. And if there's other ways we could get together and find out, okay, if there's so many exits or a good fire alarm system, or, the main thing is to get the life out of there. It's more than the building, in my opinion, it's the life safety. But, I think it's way over, to me, it feels way over. It's more of a burden here in Duncanville than any place else I work. So.
Well, Chief Wheatland and Chief Chase and Chief Rohde, in response to Councilmember Anderson, at a later time, because we're dealing at the national or the international level on codes right now. In answer to what Mr. Anderson is asking, if possible, if you could give us a matrix later showing what the code shows and showing how we compare with the code in terms of, are we more stringent, more strict in certain aspects of the code, or are we simply in compliance with the current code of best use? If you could do that, I think it'd be helpful to us. So,
yes, sir. Mayor, this is Greg Chase again. Absolutely. And I think on the next slide, it's going to give you, just some recommendations, something for you to think about. And yes, that discussion needs to have a long time slot, set aside for us to run all of this down to you and compare,
okay.
different ordinances from different cities.
Okay.
So just to clarify there, we took out the recommendations because this was more of a just information topic. Right. And we do have that, but like I said, it's going to be that's going to be a whole different day if y'all have time for it, because going through the recommendations tonight would be it would be very time
right. That's what I'm saying. Some other time, Steve. Some other time. Yeah.
Okay. So just to finish up this slide here, we talked about occupancy types and usage. So daycare, storage, educational facilities, your multi-story buildings, your auto repairs. So one of the things that we're running into is your occupancy, or your occupants are misclassifying their business. So when a new tenant applies for a CO, they are misclassifying their use and their intention for their space. Just recently, we had a space that applied for a dry cleaning CO, which was allowed, and I gave them their CO. And code enforcement was driving by and noticed that they were doing a complete remodel in the building that we're talking about. And so they stopped and asked them and said that they were putting in a donut store. Well, the donut store requires a whole different set of standards. They've got to have a hood system and all this stuff. Well, they already have their CO for a dry cleaning, and now, they're putting in something totally different. And this is what we're catching. Occupants are being, potential tenants or occupants are being misled as to the use of the occupancy that they are wanting to acquire. Several factors are in play, such as type of building, the use, the zoning, the hazard, these all need to be relayed to the potential tenants prior to any kind of occupying of the space. And that's kind of a recommendation, but it's just something that, needs to be put out there. Next slide, please. So we'll just open it up for questions or comments, and then, like you said, we'll go back and put some recommendations together and try and meet at a later time.
Okay.
Mayor, before we get too far into that, this is Greg Chase again. Just some other examples and some things we've been running into as far as misclassifying, what have you. Some of the occupants or potential renters don't necessarily know the types of uses that they need to put down, which creates a problem with our city ordinances and with the code as far as how that's classified. We also have some issues, like Steve said, they go in there, they'll change their business. There's another example of somebody applied for a CO in a building for a retail shop. There was no problem whatsoever. Went by and inspected them again, and they were running a daycare out of the store. All daycares need a sprinkler system. And not only that, they were backed up into an industrial area that the daycare was not allowed. So what we want you to understand is a lot of the multiple occupancies, they cannot coexist in the same building without this sprinkler system, fire alarm system, and things like in those type of safety measures. We're all about trying to get businesses in those buildings, but it needs to be the proper business and with the proper protection. And that's, as Councilmember Anderson was saying, that mixed use, it depends on what that mixed use is, determines what type of protection it needs. We just need to get the proper business in the proper place. And with the buildings we have in Duncanville, sometimes it does create a challenge.
Well, I would hope that when those things are misclassified, that it is unintentional rather than the occupant intentionally misclassifying, hoping to skirt some kind of fire code.
Yes, sir. Some is not.
Right.
Mayor Gordon?
Yeah, Ms. Jameson.
I was just going to say, I think that's why it's imperative that we hold the owner responsible, because the owner knows who they're renting to. And if it started out to be a dry cleaner and it changed to a donut shop, the owner should be aware of that.
Absolutely.
And, maybe it was two different people, maybe it wasn't, but I know they are bottom line, but this is a discussion that some of you don't know we had last night talking about the code and zoning, and owners know who they're renting to, who's giving them the check. And I think they should be held responsible for who, in the end, is in fact renting the building.
Yeah, but tenants do stuff all the time without owners knowing about it. All the time.
I understand that.
Constantly.
I understand that.
So it's not absolute. Nothing.
I understand that, Monty.
So.
I understand that. But if the owner knows that they will be responsible for it, then they will keep a closer eye on their property, which they should.
Councilmember Veracruz has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of things to my point is the sprinkler system. One is that obviously it's to preserve property and life if possible on one end. On the other end is a firefighter and our first responders. It also helps us because it suppresses the fire, hopefully enough to where we can contain it once we get there. And also it protects us and that the structure is not involved in the fire, just the contents. Second point that I remember reading in this briefing is that we're to consider if we should maintain or continue with the 2015 code or consider the 2018. And what I'd recommend is probably considering the 2018 code. And the reason is because we're updating all our ordinances right now. And right now would be the time to really consider moving forward to a newer version or edition of the International Fire Code. So thank you.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, we're ready to move on. Thank you very much for that, Fire Marshal Wheatland and Greg Chase, Chief Chase, for clarification and input on that. And at a later time, we are going to get some more information on this for some recommendations and decisions by council. Thanks very much.
Councilmember Cooks has his hand raised.
Hey, Mayor, and I just more so city manager, when we have things like this, is it possible to, and I know it's hard to put a date on it right then, but somehow note this where we can come back? I just don't want it to get, not that we intentionally forget it, but we got so much going on that we will probably forget it at some point. How do you recommend in the future, not just this, any item that we have a follow up on that we can know that we're going to get a follow up on it?
We keep track with those items. It is trying to accommodate the many items that are, getting on schedules, making sure we have the council meetings that we can have that. So, it is our plan. It also takes time for us to do the research to provide the answers to some of the questions. So for example, like tonight, we'll come back, but our intention is not to forget about it. It is to come back at the most expeditious time that we can.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, the action items as a result of briefing sessions are always, I don't know if you ever have an opportunity to go into Paul's office or any of the other executive staff, you'll see a whiteboard with a whole bunch of action items, like city secretary's office and Greg Ramey's office. There's a whiteboard with action items and things that they're working on all the time.
Paul's whiteboard's always empty when I go in there, but okay.
Okay.
I have a steel trap, right here.
Yeah.
I have to keep them in line.
Councilman Cooks, he could be that efficient.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. All right. We're moving on to, we're still in the briefing session, by the way. And we are we're just a couple minutes past our 7 o'clock time. So if we could move on. I know that y'all hate me to do that, but that's what I got to do sometimes. Item B is to provide a briefing to City Council on requested Hotel Motel Tax Grants for fiscal year 2021. Jessica James, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, as the Mayor said, that I'll be providing Council with a briefing of the legal use of hotel occupancy taxes, along with giving you an overview of the grant requests that the city's received for this year. Next slide, please. I'll first be providing the council some background in terms of how those taxes or those revenues are generated, as they do not come out of the general fund. The city's hotel motel tax revenues are actually generated from the 7% taxes paid by guests who rent a room in Duncanville. So again, it's visitors that are paying for this revenue. The local taxes authorized by the state of Texas, and therefore the expenditure of these funds are also restricted and must be used according to state law. Next slide, please. There's a two-part test for every expenditure of local hotel occupancy taxes. The first is for every expenditure must directly enhance and promote tourism and the convention and hotel industry. Under the tax code, every event, program, or facility funded with hotel occupancy tax revenue must likely do two things. First, it must directly promote tourism, essentially put heads in beds, and two, directly promote the convention and again, the hotel industry. Criteria 2, every expenditure of the hotel occupancy tax must clearly fit into one of 9 statutorily provided categories for expenditure of these revenues. Next slide, please. So the next question that many people have is, well, how does the state of Texas actually define tourism and a direct promotion? Tourism is defined under Texas state law as guiding or managing individuals who are traveling to a different city, county, state, or country. A direct promotion of the convention and hotel industry has been consistently interpreted by the Texas Attorney General as a program, event, or facility likely to cause increased hotel or convention activity. One thing that you all are very in tune with is the field house. That can be one of those items. Next slide, please. So the first criteria that, as we spoke about earlier, everybody asks, but there's no statutorily formula for determining the level of impact an event must have to satisfy the requirement to directly promote tourism in the hotel and convention industry. The Texas Hotel Lodging Association is basically the association that the state of Texas relies on to somewhat govern or oversee the expenditures of these funds through city governments or other organizations such as chambers of commerce. Their opinion states that communities with successful tourism promotion programs generally award the amount of hotel occupancy tax by the proportionate impact on tourism and hotel activity. Entities apply for hotel occupancy tax revenue funding should indicate how they will market the event. And this is something that you all, that council does know, is that the city has an application process. And that is one of the questions that is asked to all applicants in terms of how are they going to promote their event in order to attract the tourists and hotel guests. If an entity does not adequately market its event, basically the Hotel Lodging Association believes that it's difficult to produce an event or facility that will effectively promote tourism and the hotel activity meeting that first criteria. Next slide, please. Criteria 2 states that every expenditure of the hotel occupancy tax must clearly fit into one of the 9 statutorily provided categories, as I spoke about earlier. The categories include, first, funding the establishment, improvement, or maintenance of a convention center or visitor center. 2, and that's where the request from the Duncanville, we'll talk about that here in a little bit, where the chamber's request for the visitors funding comes from or fits into. 2, paying the administrative costs for facilitating convention registration. 3, paying for advertising, solicitations, and promotions that attract tourists and convention delegates to the city or its vicinity. And as you all know in your packets that we provided to you tonight on the different grant requests, you can see in there that there's a question as well that asks specifically in terms how those funds will be used to do that. Next slide, please. Fourth, thank you. Fourth is expenditures that promote the arts. And this is really where the Duncanville Theater really falls under in terms of their request. Texas law still requires that the arts related to the expenditures also directly promote tourism in the hotel and convention industry. So the Texas Hotel Lodging Association and the Texas Fine Arts have agreed that to be eligible for municipal arts funding with hot fund revenues, recipients must satisfy the following requirements. And basically, again, they have to promote their event and encourage tourism through their activities to basically frequent or visit your city. Secondly, the hotel occupancy tax programs and events, again, are open to the general public, so they can't be closed events. If that's all they host, then they would not qualify. And then C, the recipient directly enhances and promotes tourism in the convention and hotel industry. Next slide, please. The fifth statutory that it has to meet is, or could meet, I'm sorry, fall into, is funding historical restoration or preservation programs. 6 would be funding certain expenses, including promotional expenses, directly related to a sporting event within the counties with a population of fewer than 1 million. Obviously, we don't fit into that category. 7, funding the enhancement or upgrading of existing sport facilities or sports fields for certain municipalities. And that is, under this mechanism, is one of the way that the field house renovations have been done in the past. 8, funding transportation systems for tourists. This is something, again, that we do offer to the hotels if they are interested in assistance for a specific event. Obviously, with COVID, things have completely changed, but in the past, that has been available if hotels were interested in taking part in that. 9, signage directing tourists to sites and attractions that are visited frequently by hotels guests in the municipality. And this is basically your wayfinding signage that you find when you go to other communities. Next slide, please. Do any of the council members at this point, and I'm going to just do an overview of the different grant requests. At this point, does any council member have any question about the information that I've went over so far? No?
No, I don't have any. But you're going to go over these, but we're going to hear them again during our regular council meeting?
It's just high level, Mr. Cooks. I won't go into them individually. It's just a high level.
Okay, thank you.
And
But
so,
Jessica, what I'm looking at here is in the package for
yes,
the-
sir.
So is it safe for us council members to conclude that these grants, the 4 grants that are on the agenda for tonight, you have, or the EDC has reviewed those, you've reviewed those, and they are in compliance with the law and would not be coming before us if they weren't in compliance with the law. So that's something that we should just keep in mind in our back pocket when we get to these things, that we can just go through these and move on and understand that they are authorized and qualified under the law.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Mary, you're exactly right that all of these have been reviewed. We've reviewed them with our city attorney. And if you have any questions relating to the legality aspect, Bob is ready to answer any of those questions. Again, as the mayor said, this request does fall underneath the arts request. As many council members know, over the years I've talked about, in the law, it actually states that up to 15% of the of your budget for the Hotel Motel Taxes budget can be allocated to the arts. So this definitely falls within that, and we'll get into more detail here in a brief minute when we go into the individual items. So with that, next slide, please. And again, both this event as well as the GASO event, both of these events do fall under the statute that we talked about as well. And so we'll get into more detail in a minute on those. So with that, next slide, please. And again, this is just kind of an overview of the individual grants so that you would be familiar with them. And if you had any questions that I could answer right now in the briefing session, I wanted to make sure that you all were comfortable with these, just as the mayor stated, in terms of meeting the requirements of the law before we moved forward with the individual items. I will just remind council as well that back when we had our budget meetings, we talked about them at a very high level. We didn't go into detail at all, but we did know that we would be receiving some of these requests as we've showed here before you. So with that.
Yes, I have a question here. I'm not sure if you want to wait till we get into the other portion of it, but my question is going to be about the amount for this particular one, especially with the restrictions that we have now with the hotels and exposure. It's so 45 is the same amount, well, 45,000. So it looks like we're expecting the same attendance. Nothing's going to change that we've had in the previous years. Is that still correct? And if so, I guess how they're going to accommodate that?
Well, I tell you what, Mr. Cooks, yes, that's a great question. They are still having, and actually it says 4 events. These events, and Mr. Lowe's here with us this evening. He'll go into more detail with you all here in a minute. But there's also a 5th event. It just does not have the, it's more of just a day event, if you will. And so we don't really recognize that as generating hotel motel taxes. But they've already had events this year that have proven to be successful, and they do anticipate that in the future. They have not reduced their number of events, and so that is why they're asking for the same amount of money. And if you look down there at the bottom in terms of what that funding is requested for, these are, and this is something that is very important for all these grants. You know, every year we've talked to council, and last year you kind of set us straight and said, yes, we say this every year and we want to continue with this policy. Y'all's policy in the past has definitely been for reimbursement grants. And so what that means is that it has to be for expenditures that the recipient has incurred to meet the statute and to properly spend those funds. And so I can assure you that even if, for instance, this is a great example, this year with COVID, there was a reduction in one event, and therefore their expenses did not come out to the total $45,000. So they were not reimbursed for the $45,000. That is the same with the theater. They were only reimbursed for those expenses that they provided the receipts that were for eligible costs. So yes, by all means, and we can get into more into detail with Mr. Lowe here on his individual item, but by all means, that would be the only way that they would receive these amounts, is if they were able to provide those expenses that showed that they incurred those putting on the event.
All right, thank you.
Our Councilmember Jameson had her hand up.
Yeah. Can we go back to the previous slide?
Yes, ma'am. Did you have a question?
Okay, yes, where it says amount requested $6,750. This event has been canceled for 2020. So
Yes, that is correct, Ms. Jameson. This event, we were notified that this, by Mr. Martin, that this event had been canceled. They still are requesting funding. And as you can see there at the bottom, even though the event is not taking place this year, they feel like that it is critical, especially with the other options out there to hold events and locations, that it's critical that they continue to promote the event and keep excitement and keep connection with those teams, so that they don't go other places and next year they come back to Duncanville as well. So, and if you have further questions about the kind of the legal issues, because that's something that I definitely spoke with Mr. Hager about, he can answer any questions on that.
Hey, folks, we're still in the briefing session, and what we're looking at is still going to be, it's still in the package for the individual items under individual approval. I think we need to move on and get out of this briefing session with this information. We can get into more detail when it comes up for individual consideration. Yeah, Don?
Thank you, Mayor. The way I look at it, assuming, well, most of these are the same events that we've done year after year after year, and the funding's there. We've talked about the reimbursement and things, so I would like to recommend that we put items C through F on the consent agenda.
So with that recommendation coming from Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, when that recommendation is made, City Attorney, I've got to go back in my memory. That can be done, but it needs to be done with a motion and approval.
Councilman Anderson also has his hand raised.
I need to hear from City Attorney, please.
Yes, Mayor and Council, you can do it by agreement, by consent, or it can be done by motion in the regular session. Either way is acceptable.
But it can't be done now because we're still in the briefing session.
You could say if anyone has any objection, if so, then otherwise we'll have to do it by motion and second in the session, but you
Well,
can
I
do
have
it
an
by
objection.
consensus if you would like.
I was just talking about the Duncanville Lions Club, Sandra Meadows, and you said we'd talk about it when we got into it. And the motion to just put them all together and have a mass vote is by our fellow Lions Club member on the council. So I'd like to know more about that.
Well, then that objection to putting this particular item on the consent agenda, we would have to say that one would not go. Do you have any objection to the other three being put on the consent agenda?
No?
Question.
All right, Mr. Anderson.
Can you go back to the Duncanville Community Theater? I would like to know how many events were held this year at the Duncanville Community Theater.
2.
Shows 2 from
Right there.
Just 2 events.
Yes, those are the number of shows that they held, Councilmember Anderson. They were not able to hold their spring event or the summer event because of the COVID mandates.
But Monty, they're not handed the money. They have to hand in receipts.
It's all on, it's a reimbursable action.
Yeah. So if
Yeah,
they don't spend it, they don't get handed $26,000.
So I don't understand then.
It's like-
Mayor and council, maybe I could clear it up. When Jessica and I review the agreements, we identify the activities which the monies could be used for in her outline. There's, the 2-prong, does it promote tourism and does it meet one of the 10 categories that are available for, or 9 categories that are available for funding. So on paper, they appear that all of the requests for funding fall within the parameters of the test. And why we recommend that we do reimbursement is then we have another level of review when they make the application for the reimbursable amount within the budgeted agreement that you would pass tonight. We again review that to make sure that each and every item that's on their request has been spent and it meets the parameters of the 2-prong test. So when you look at approving the agreements tonight, all we're doing is saying they appear on their face to be within the categories. And then Jessica puts each of the applicants through the cauldron of reviewing all of the receipts and making sure they fall within those categories. And then if there's a question, her and I talk, and we have done so. There's probably anywhere from 10 to 20 conversations or interactions between her and I over the course of the fiscal year to make sure that all of each and every expense is spent for the appropriate provisions in compliance with the hotel occupancy tax restrictions on funding. And that's just an overview so you know how we do that. So if you have questions about their promotional activities or their advertising, then you'll, those are categories which are available to them. But if you have individual questions, you'll have to ask the applicants those questions. So that's just an overview. Thank you.
And Mr. Anderson, real quickly, for the theater, for instance, as Ms. Jameson said, you all last year did approve, the council did, for them to receive $30,000. But again, they didn't have those shows, so their expenses were reduced. And so in essence, by the time that we have one last payment that we're processing for them for the year end, they would have received $24,700. So it's only on the reimbursement of the receipts.
Okay. I'm just, and I understand COVID this year, but I would just like to, I'm all for the community theater and even helping them as much as possible. I would just like to see more activity over there, than is over there. So I understand COVID has put a dampener on that, but that's just my only comment there. Thank you.
All right, so what we have is a request to make items let's see, 5C, 5E, and 5F, consent items, and leaving item
Well, I did want to hear from the,
5D on individual consideration.
I did want to hear the comments. I did want to hear the comments on the one for Gasco though, since he's here.
Well, what we're saying is that Gasso is going under individual consideration rather than going to consent, and the other three are going to consent.
Okay, all right.
So if there's agreement with that, we will move.
No, Mayor, I asked about D, the Lions Club.
I know
Yeah.
that, yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That particular, the Gasso is going to remain on individual consideration. The other three go to consent.
No, sir, Mayor. Gasso, based upon what is Gasso would go as consent. Lions Club would go to individual consideration.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not it's the Sandra Meadows. I get it. It's basketball. I keep getting, it's all
But
basketball.
Mark just said he wanted to hear from Gasso.
Yes, I do.
So that means Gasso and, that's C and D.
Okay, let's see. C is Gasso and D is Sandra Meadows. And so C and D remain on individual consideration. Items 5E and 5S go to consent. Agreement? Okay. So 5E and 5F, City Secretary, make a note, so you need to read these. 5E and 5F are going to consent.
I got it.
Okay. And 5C and D remain on individual consideration. And I want to make a comment that it is my personal feeling that the motion by Pro Tem Mayor Mac Burnett has nothing at all to do with his membership in the Lions Club, but simply for expediency and making our city council meeting go a little more efficiently. Okay, so that concludes this particular portion. Got to get back to our agenda. That concludes item 2B for the briefing session. Going to item 2C.
Mayor Pro Tem has his hand up.
Okay, Mr. McBurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the word you said. That is exactly right. Also, since we're on it, we have a board, TIF board appointment, and I would also like that to be moved to the consent agenda as well. That's putting Michael Grace onto the TIF board.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Is there consent to do that among the among the council members? I'll go with silence is consent.
Yes.
Okay, so removing item 5B, that's the appointment of Michael Grace to the TIF board. Item 5B goes to consent also. Thank you, Mr. McBurnett. Another evidence of your desire to make this more efficient.
Well, I'm sorry. If that's the case, go ahead and move the Middle Creek back wall C there as well, because we've heard that more than once.
That's already on consent.
Yeah, that's consent already. That back wall is consent already.
I got moved up too high. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, we've only got 15 consent items, Mark. It's easy to get a little confused.
Don't make me go over those again.
Okay. All right. So, Paul, you're up with the city council calendar. That's item 2C on the briefing session still.
Okay, Mayor, a couple items just real quick. I sent you an email. We're proposing, and we've pretty much canceled. I think we got most everyone's comments to cancel the upcoming joint meeting between the City Council and the DCEDC. We will schedule that for some time in November to discuss the item for consideration of the appraisal for Main Street. And so that will be at a later date. And then my other question was on the 27th that we had scheduled a workshop to go over a couple items. And so obviously with the COVID cases going up, my desire was to be able to have that in person. I also understand the reticence of council that they may not want to do that. We were able to have the joint meeting with the Parks Board in the council chamber, and I think successfully social distance. But I will bend to the council's desires on that, but I would like to be able to have that in person. And if council feels this is not the time to do that, then I would like to push that meeting off until we can meet in person, because I think the items that we wish to discuss would really need to be done in person. I think it would be a tough ask in a Zoom meeting.
I agree with that, Paul, that this is something that needs to be done in person. And with the county moving in from the orange to the red on the risk scale, it's best that, my opinion, is that we forego this being done on the 27th. Other inputs, please?
Yeah, I want to commend Paul and staff for setting up the council chamber the way it looked with all of the separation of us. I thought it went really well with the Parks Board joint meeting. So I just want to commend them. I wish we could only push it back, and I know and to be considerate for those of meeting in person, but at some point we're only going to be able to push this stuff so far back, and I'm not sure how far it's going to put us really behind the 8 ball of trying to catch up. So we're going to find ourselves trying to rush through these meetings, and Paul will probably add this on top of some of his briefing presentation. So at some point we got to figure out how we're going to do this. So just
I'm sorry, this one was on what?
This is the workshop.
I know, but on what?
Oh, we wanted to talk to you about a couple items. We wanted to bring the Main Street project back up, Councilmember Jamison, and also talk about the fire station project.
Okay.
Again, those are things just kind of like with the Parks Board. We want to, have some displays. And so it's more than we can, I think, address in a Zoom meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll go on my whiteboard, Councilmember Cooks. And we will, I think as soon as council's comfortable, we'll certainly get it scheduled.
Yeah. If the county can move into the orange, maybe we can reconsider this. But right now we're back in red, and our counts are going up in terms of positive cases.
Okay.
Moving on, Mr. Richardson, anything else?
And then the only other item, Mayor and members of council, is, I think we had a good meeting last night regarding the zoning code update. There were a couple items that council asked for those to come back for review in a joint setting. So I was proposing either Monday, November 9th. Actually, I think we can do it at that time. That's in several weeks. The Planning and Zoning Commission actually has a regular scheduled meeting anyway. So what I would propose is to have a joint meeting on the 9th on Monday, and then have those items presented first. And then when we're done with the joint meeting, if the Planning and Zoning has further items for consideration, they can move on. But will that work for the rest of the city council on the Monday, November 9th?
Let's just run it down. District 1, Joe, November 9.
Yes, sir, I'm good with that.
Okay, Don, number
Yes.
2. Okay, Monty, 3.
Yes.
Mark, 4.
Still providing that Monday Night Football. Yes.
Johnette, 5. Hey, Johnette, are you okay with November 9?
Yes, I think so. I think that it's okay.
Okay. Patrick, at large?
I'm having trouble. Can you hear me?
Yes, we've got you.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah, and I'm good with November 9. So November 9, mark it.
That'll be Zoom. That'll be virtual.
That's going to be 6 p.m. and it's P and Z. And
Joint P and Z and city council meeting. Yes, sir.
Got it. Okay. Anything else?
Well, there's only one other item on the calendar we just need to talk about, is the Christmas parade. Again, as you mentioned before, the counts are going up. In your staff report, we just presented items, we've surveyed a number of our cities, and many of the cities are canceling their events. There's been some options of a virtual parade or a reverse parade where people come out to the float, but we're also still trying to determine whether the school district would even be able to participate. And again, I think with the numbers as they are, and I think just the caution, we're recommending to cancel the Christmas parade. Again, it's unfortunate. We've had to cancel other events. We're just in unprecedented times. But again, just the logistics and so forth, we're asking at this time because this is the time we would start planning that. It's not with, it's with a, heavy heart to ask to basically recommend that, but that's where we're at. And again, we don't think we can accommodate the crowds. We can't, again, with the order of no more than 10, clearly that could be waived by the mayor, but we would anticipate large crowds that we cannot accommodate.
Can we wait a little while on this one? I mean,
Mayor, I'll be honest, we have to, this is the decision. You don't meet again until the end of November. We start planning for the Christmas parade now.
Yeah, it's always in early December too. It's already.
Yes, sir. It's the first, yes, and it's been moved to that first Saturday. So we would have already started planning for this.
Yeah, I'm talking about the school participation. It's the joint choirs from the elementary and the middle school, and the band playing in the parade and all that kind of stuff. Have you talked to the superintendent by any chance about his participation or what his thoughts are?
I've not talked directly to the superintendent, but we've been in contact with their appropriate staff at the school district, and they're still, again, they've got their priorities. They just opened school this week. So it's one of those issues that they're really concentrating on, taking care of their students. And so this is probably not up there as far as priority. But, again, we look at our logistics that we have to have a number of officers, street closures and so forth. So again, I don't know what else we would wait to see if it got better by then, because again, you're still looking at the same crowds, whether we're in red or orange or whatever.
But I think the other question there, do you think one city is doing it where they're stationary and people are driving through?
That's one idea that we've heard, where you can have stationary floats. But again, you're having to find, for us, we're having to find the location and try to put that together fairly quick. And so, where they would drive by the floats. That's not to guarantee, the problem is guaranteeing that we'd actually have floats. If we don't have the school participation, that knocks a lot of those participants out. Not to say that we wouldn't have any participants, but they're a really strong partner in doing that. And I'm not trying to put the burden on the school district. Again, I feel for what they're having to deal with, again, with their students and dealing with those issues. Again, this is not a pleasant ask, but it's just the environment we're in. But most cities have canceled their event.
And it's really hard to gauge any kind of participation without a real parade. I mean, people enjoy a parade and not having a drive-by. To me, I don't think we get as much participation, and it'd almost be a non-event having a drive-by. Yeah, Mark, I see.
Right, because you've got people lined on the streets, and then they go to, then the ceremony with the tree. So, I mean, again, there's no way to keep people from congregating in something like that.
We are going to do a tree, though, right? We're doing.
We'll have a tree. We'll have a tree.
Are we still going to do the lighting?
We'll turn them on.
No, me.
You can turn them on. Anybody will multiple.
We
will work with all of y'all. We'll turn it on several times.
We'll do social.
We'll have something.
Got to hit that switch on the tree, man.
We'll get that. We can do that virtually.
All right. Okay. Hey, one question. Going back, the fire truck pull, is that on or off?
That is on. The way he's got staggered teams. And so what they're able to do is have a team, move the team off and bring a new team on. So that we're able to kind of say we don't have nearly the kind of crowd. So he's able to, again, mass social distance. Again, you won't have congregations. You'll have teams that will participate and move on. But unfortunately, he doesn't have the same amount of teams that are signed up either. So it'll be a much more scaled down event, unfortunately.
So no food trucks and that.
A very popular event.
No food trucks, that type of thing?
I think they'll have.
They'll have in and out.
Yeah, I think they have in and out there. That's right. I was trying to remember the one that they were able to get.
Oh, okay. All right.
I just was thinking, I'll pass on, Paul, but I'm still shaking my head. I just wish there's some way we could get a little more creative, though, with the parade. And I know in the time we're in, think about how creative people are getting now with birthdays things. They're having to drive through the neighborhood. I don't ask you about it to do how you do it now, but I know you have a very creative staff. And if y'all come back later with something very creative that will that you think will work, I would ask that you would still try it and throw it by us and see how it works. At least give us an option to say no on, and not just no.
But at this point, Mark, when we're not meeting again till end November, and we're talking about the first Saturday in December, we got to decide tonight whether it's a go or no go. I don't think there's any other options for us to delay this decision.
Well, we could have a very small special call meeting if you came up with anything, if it's that important to us. And I think it is. It's not that it's not important to us, but if you came up with something that was creative, I don't know who would say I'm not available to have a very small Zoom special meeting and say, here's what we have and here's how we think it'll work.
Well, let us have discussions, but just bear in mind it will be very scaled down. But we certainly can have the discussions. But again, we are going to put public safety ahead of anything else as far as the parade.
Oh yeah. I'm not compromising that. I mean, even to the point of you decide to drive on the Mayor's Street or Johnette Street and go from there. But I'm just saying something creative, and I know you're a creative team, and so whatever you guys can.
We could bring the tree to the mayor's house. That would be creative.
Okay.
I could dress up as Santa Claus and stand on my front yard and wave to people when they drive by.
Yeah.
You're missing a front part. Okay, thank you, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what we're saying is the normal parade is canceled, and we'll look at some type of alternative, even if it means driving by my house, or how about every council member have a drive-by so the entire city sees all 7 council members.
We'll meet and see if we can come up with some alternatives. But like you said, I think the parade, as you know, we cannot sustain that.
Right. Yeah. The parade is over, but we look at some creative individual ideas. Ms. Jameson, I see your mic is open. Did you have some comment, or is it just open?
No, I agree with what Mark said, that I know we can't do it, but and I think, you ought to hear, I doubt the school does anything, but if they wanted to, we ought to be able to take care of them if they want to march and sing and stuff.
We'll visit, and if we've got something, I'll certainly get that back to council.
Okay. All right, good. All right, folks, we're going to close our work session. And timestamp on that is 7:43.
Mayor and council, I assume that you would request that the executive session be moved to the end of the meeting.
Yes, that's going to have to happen.
Thank you.
All right, so with the closing of the work and briefing session, and we're going to move executive session to the end of our meeting, we're going to open city council and opening our regular session. So I'm calling to order the regular session of the Duncanville City Council for Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. And timestamp on that is 7:44. And I have asked Council Member Patrick Harvey if he would do the invocation, please.
Okay, shall we pray? Dear God, our Heavenly Father, we pause at this moment to say thank you for life, health, and strength, the active use of our limbs, and for the opportunity to serve you by serving our fellow man and our neighbors in the community of Duncanville. We are thankful that you provided us a model of what service should be when you gave your only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, who came not to do his will, but the will of him that sent him. So we pray that you might grant us the mind of Christ, that we would follow his example, impart to us wisdom and discernment and prudence, and help us proceed decently and in order, that we might accomplish your purpose for this community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you would individually rise and individually say the pledges to the flags of the United States and thank you very much. Moving on to item 1 in our city agenda is the mayor's report. I do have a few items to go over, and I will do my very best to keep it at my 3 minutes. First thing I would like to say is the 4 hours that we spent with planning and zoning yesterday with staff was very, very productive, very fruitful. Those 4 hours, it was a long meeting, but very well done. And I want to extend my thanks to all the council members, all the staff, and to all the members of P&Z, the commissioners that took their time to work through those items. And also a sad note, Commissioner Jana McBroom's husband passed away yesterday, and that's why she was not able to be with us during the P&Z meeting. So our condolences are extended to Ms. McBroom and the passing of her husband, Thomas. We're very, very sorry to hear that. And as I mentioned before, this Dallas County has moved on the scale from orange back to red based on a number of cases of COVID reoccurring. And the city of Duncanville is over 1,300 positive cases now. And we're basically in consonance with all the cities around us, anywhere between 12, 13, or 1,400 positive cases for best Southwest and South Dallas County. So people just got to be safe, stay home if you can, stay safe, wear masks, wash your hands, do everything possible to avoid contracting COVID-19. Also, early voting is underway. It's very important that we get out and get the vote. It's very positive for our country to do that. As for our citizens, I wanted to let them know that the search for our new city manager with an executive search firm is still working and is on schedule. Don't have any exact positive dates for that in terms of when we will hire a city manager, but the search is going on at the moment, and we're doing our very best. And it's, as I said, it is on schedule. Texas Municipal League held its annual conference on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of last week. It was all virtual, and I wasn't able to participate on Wednesday, but Thursday and Friday was very fruitful, and I know we did have some other council members that participated in that. And lastly, just wanted to indicate that Mr. Steve Martin, the president of the Duncanville Chamber of Commerce, while there are 2 items on the agenda tonight related to his facility, yes, that he is unable to attend based on a personal family issue. So we want to extend our prayers and thanks to Mr. Martin for letting us know that. So that's the end of my mayor's report. Any city council members' reports? Mr. Cooks.
Yes, a couple of things. I did attend the TML Zoom call from Wednesday through Friday, and I have to admit that the Zoom call kept my attention, probably because of the items that was being presented. And so I was already able to share some of those with the city manager. So I did thank the citizens for allowing us to attend that through taxpayer dollars, of course. Like the mayor, I want to encourage all to vote. We see record numbers going out, and just to encourage everybody to keep voting. This is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and just want to at least acknowledge those with had breast cancer, the survivors. It's been invited for us as council, if you like, on Saturday at Armstrong Park at 10 o'clock. There is a virtual walk for breast cancer awareness. And so if you're available at 10 o'clock on Saturday at Armstrong Park, we have some Duncanville people that will be out there walking. And I just wanted to pass it on since it was passed on to me as well. National Night Out. I had a great time National Night Out. I went through different neighborhoods with the 5 following people: Chief Robert Brown, Officer Doug Sisk, Sergeant Mayo, Detective Berger, and then Constable Ed Wright. We just hit different streets, knocked on a couple of doors, social distance, and recognized it being National Night Out. So we just hit little different neighborhoods, and we had a great time doing it. And when people saw the cars out, they started coming out talking to the officers. So that was great. And then last, for those who know this gentleman, he sold a lot of houses in Duncanville. The passing of Jesse Browning, he actually sold out my community here where I live. He sold some other houses in Duncanville. The passing of Jesse Browning and I just want to give my prayers to him and his family. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooks. Any other? Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, I echo your sentiments about voting, but also want to give credit to Athena Seaton and the planning group for doing the Chalk the Walk this past weekend. Made it a fun activity and event. There was other people out there as well. Nice work done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council member reports? Okay, seeing none, moving on to the city manager's report.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, proclamations and presentations. Item number 2A, we have a video presentation of Duncanville police officer with life-saving bars and the Children's Network recognition. We ready to run that?
Yes, sir, absolutely. First of all, Mayor, thank you and the council for the opportunity to recognize the work of the men and women of the Duncanville Police Department. We prepared a video, and in interest of time, we have edited the video. We're going to show you 3 calls for service where all police officers save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Brown.
Today, I have the honor of presenting life-saving awards to 8 Duncanville police officers. Over the past several months, these 8 police officers responded to calls for police service where they used their training and compassion to save human life. So now, we will show you separate short video clips of 3 calls for police service and let you witness for yourselves the passion, empathy, and dedication of the men and women of the Duncanville Police Department.
Talk to me. What's your name? No. Okay.
4244, if you start 5 minutes in this route with lock and everything, I'll be back to you. 4244, right window. It's okay. I know. It's Officer Joshua Eagle. And his life-saving award is dated July 28, 2020. Essentially, on March 17, 2020, at approximately 3:29 a.m., he responded to a medical call of an adult having a heart attack and chest pains at an address in our city. Without regard for waiting on anyone, he immediately began to assist this individual by applying CPR to help save this gentleman's life. So we're extremely proud of all officers, and we can't thank them enough. So, Officer Engel, I'm going to present today your life-saving award. Again, it's dated July 28, 2020. Thank you very much. So, very successful. As I said before we got started, I'm extremely blessed to lead such a dedicated workforce. The men and women of this police department consistently perform outstanding work. I'm so very proud of them. They are supported by our leadership in the city. They're supported by our elected officials. So, gentlemen, from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, I just simply want to say thank you very much for your outstanding work.
Again, Mayor and Council, thank you very much for this opportunity to highlight the outstanding work of the men and women of the Duncanville Police Department. The last presentation was presented to Officer Joshua Engel, and there was not a video. He simply responded to a call for service on March the 14th of 2020, where he was able to help a medical call, and he performed CPR on an adult male, and we believe that he was able to help this individual survive. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Chief Brown, it is not possible for us to express how much we appreciate our police force, and we're humbled by having such exceptional individuals throughout our staff that wear our uniform and keeping our citizens safe. I've said it before publicly, and I'll say it again tonight, that the call upon an individual's life to be a first responder, especially law enforcement, is something that is in their heart and in their spirit, that when danger occurs and there is harm available, instead of running away from that, that they run to that particular problem. And even with our council member, Joe Vera Cruz, as a firefighter and first responder, we thank him and all of our first responders, and for the life-saving awards being given to those individuals tonight on our police force. Our deepest thanks for what they do. It's just so much pride that each of us has for everyone that we have in our department. Thank you so much, Chief Brown.
Thank you, sir. We greatly appreciate your kind comments, and we appreciate the support of our governing body. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We have item 2B is the Best Southwest Partnership Annual Report Presentation. Dr. Joe Seabrooks, I see is available for that, and Executive Director Corey Lacey. So turning it over to y'all. Dr. Joe?
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, distinguished members of the council, citizens and friends. I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the 2020 chair of the Best Southwest Partnership, and I just want to share with you a brief update. In essence of time, we do have a presentation. We'll quickly go through it. Madam Secretary, if you can get us to page 3. I want to take a few moments to acknowledge that although we've experienced a tremendous amount of success, we have tremendous a great loss. Mr. Corey Lacey, who is on the call with us, will be leaving us this Friday. He's been a tremendous leader, moving our partnership forward, and we're really proud of what's next for him, and we are appreciative of his time here. He's on the call, but I'll ask him to make remarks at the end if there's time left for us. Could you please advance to the next slide, please? I do want to just quickly share that the success that we have experienced in leading our region is because of the city of Duncanville. You are an original foundational member since 1986 and have provided leadership through the various committees and initiatives that we've been a part of. As you may know, our core initiatives are education, healthcare, transportation, workforce, and economic development. And our vision is clear, to be a thriving region for future generations. And we have this presentation for your preview at a later date. Slide 7, please, Madam Secretary, if you don't mind. I do want to just acknowledge a few things that I think might be important for you to know. The leadership of the partnership are as follows. You're only stuck with me for like less than 60 days. And Robin Mata, who's with Republic Services, is also on the call, but she won't be able to address us tonight, but she's supervising me to make sure I'm staying honest. And across the region, we have a great representation that has put us in a tremendous situation to lead our region. Slide 9, please, if you don't mind. Quickly, just want to hit a couple of quick highlights that I think you might appreciate knowing. COVID has ravaged the entire community, and all of us, we've had to pivot, especially here at the partnership. And you know, these were our pre-COVID goals, as you see listed there, really focusing on the workforce, transportation, comprehensive child care, customer service for the region, were the things that we were up to, and then strengthening our connection to the Dallas Regional Chamber to make sure that we are considered as a community of choice for new businesses. Post-COVID, we also know that there's things that we've learned that we will continue to stay vigilant on. And believe it or not, social media, our web presence, making sure that we add value to our members with timely communications and being the conduit for the region is what we will continue to commit to. Madam Secretary, slide 13, if you don't mind. And it has been a tremendous opportunity for us to have broader conversations about what it means to be in the Best Southwest Partnership. And I just want to share one of the values that we've brought to the table through Dallas College and the Texas Workforce Commission. As you see at the bottom, we've been able to secure $500,000 in funding to support small businesses in the region. And as of, I believe yesterday, this has been updated. We've served over 330 individuals and over 31 companies who benefited from this training program. And we have dollars available. And I'd like to personally invite the city of Duncanville to participate in inviting small businesses who could benefit from training to help them pivot and navigate during the pandemic. And so you can reach me directly at 972-860-8251, 972-860-8251. Madam Secretary, last slide, please, 19. And I just want to close with just a quote that I love to share. During my time here, I have met some incredible individuals, and one of which is on this call. And when I think about my opportunity to get to know you, Mr. Mayor, your quote about the value of Best Southwest, I'll just paraphrase, the unity and camaraderie evident amongst the members is truly extraordinary. And I've had that experience personally. And thank you for the City of Duncanville for your investment in the Best South partnerships. And we hope you see the value in return. So I will pause to see if Corey has questions that he can help me with answer. And that will conclude the formal remarks. Any questions we can answer?
I think we'd like to hear a parting statement from, well, let's see, Councilmember Vera Cruz, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Maybe we'd like to hear some parting remarks from Corey Lacey, since Friday is his last day. I just want to say thanks to Corey for his leadership for the short time he's been here. It's been exceptional, and the meetings that he's held and the information that we've gotten through and the initiatives and so forth have been very, very helpful to the Southwest Dallas County. So Corey, thanks so much, and our best wishes for your future as your new chapter.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, council members, I just want to say thank you for your support, for the ability to come to a region where I didn't have a whole lot of connections, and to have everyone open up so graciously their hearts and allow me in and to become a part of this region has been spectacular. I've enjoyed my time here greatly. I shared this with Dr. Seabrooks, but I am really sad to be leaving. It has nothing to do with anyone in this region. It has nothing to do with anyone on the board. It's just an opportunity that I can't pass up for my family right now. But everyone here has been so kind, and I look forward to calling every single person here a friend moving forward. Mr. Mayor, thank you again for your support and for everyone on the council.
Thank you, Corey. Best wishes. Dr. Joe, I'm sorry that we ran late, but that's just the way we are as a council. We talk with each other a lot. We have a lot of conversation, as you've seen tonight. So our apologies for you having to hang around waiting for us to get to you. Hope it's been beneficial in some way to see how the City of Duncanville operates our city council meetings in a virtual mode. So
no, sir, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item number 3 on the agenda is citizens input, and indicators from City Secretary are that we have no citizens that have indicated they wish to speak. So we will move on from item 3 to item 4. And item 4 is the consent agenda, which has been modified to some degree. So City Secretary, turning over to you to read the consent items.
Okay, y'all stay awake. Item 4A, consider the minutes for the August 26th and 31st City Council special meetings. 4B, consider a resolution approving the terms and conditions of a professional service agreement PSA-20-077 with Pacheco Coat LLC for U.S. Highway 67 Green Ribbon Landscape Construction, Inspection and Grant Management Services in an amount not to exceed $66,250. 4C, consider a resolution rejecting the bid of Ortega Land Clearing LLC authorizing award of bid number 20-027 Meadow Creek Drive bag wall erosion control attached hereto and incorporated herein as Exhibit A to Night Erosion Control, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $166,236.26. 4D, consider a resolution approving an interlocal agreement between the City of Duncanville and Dallas County to provide highway accident investigation services in an amount not to exceed $59,000. 4E, consider a resolution authorizing a cooperative purchasing agreement with Vertex Companies Vortex Infrastructure Holdings LLC using the Interlocal Purchasing Systems Contract 1711 0501 wastewater improvements pipe bursting for the Public Works Department with an estimated expenditure amount of $996,483. 4F, consider a resolution authorizing execution of Amendment Number 3, City of Grand Prairie Contract Number 16133, an interlocal cooperative agreement with Kirkco Inc. for pavement crack and joint sealing services for the predetermined prices set forth in Amendment Number 2 with an expenditure amount of $150,000. 4G, consider a resolution authorizing the purchase of personal computer hardware and related equipment from Unique Digital Inc. using the Texas Department of Information Resources Contract DIR-TSO-4299, an amount not to exceed $149,449.04. 4H, consider a resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with Ring Central Inc. for a cloud PBX telephone and communications data systems and solution, other related equipment and services using the Interlocal Purchasing System Contract 1800304 and an estimated amount of $89,170.92. 4I, consider a resolution authorizing the purchase of audiovisual and related equipment using cooperative contract from Digital Resources, Inc. through Texas Association of School Boards by Board Contract Number 579-19 in the amount of $224,150.46. 4J, consider a resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with Dell Marketing LP for new hardware, software, technology services, and maintenance and support services and other related equipment using State of Texas Department of Information Resources Cooperative Contract DIR-TSO-3763, an amount not to exceed $75,664.82. 4K, consider a resolution authorizing the purchase with Dell USA LLP for virtual desktop infrastructure hardware and related equipment, software, and deployment services using State of Texas Department of Information Resources Cooperative Contract DIR-TSO-3763 for an amount not to exceed $453,655.56. 4L, consider a resolution agreeing to engage TriStem to perform a contingency-based audit of 911 fees due to the city by telephone and wireless providers, authorizing the interim city manager to execute the contract and amendment. 4M, consider a resolution authorizing a cooperative purchase for police mobile computer hardware, related equipment, and software from GTS Technology Solutions, Inc. using the Texas Department of Information Resources Contract DIR-TSO-4025 in the amount of $140,174.98. 4N, consider an ordinance approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos City Steering Committee and Atmos Energy Corp. Mid-Texas Division regarding the company's 2020 rate review mechanism. Mid-Texas Division, following declaring existing rates to be unreasonable, adopting tariffs that reflect rate adjustments consistent with the negotiated settlement, finding the rates to be set by the attached settlement tariffs to be just and reasonable and in the public interest, approving an attached exhibit establishing a benchmark for pensions and retiree medical benefits, approving an attached exhibit regarding amortization of a regulatory liability, requiring the company to reimburse ACSC's reasonable rate making expenses, determining that this ordinance was passed in accordance with the requirements of the Texas Open Meetings Act, adopting a savings clause, declaring an effective date, and requiring delivery of this ordinance to the company and the ACSC's legal counsel. 4O, consider a resolution authorizing an amendment to Resolution 2020-004R approved on August 4, 2020 for an increase in the amount of $25,000 for a new annual amount up to $127,501 for the fiscal 2019 annual procurement and a renewal/extension amount of $200,000 for the fiscal year 2021 annual procurement with Visiting Nurses Association using interlocal cooperative contract with the City of Grand Prairie, contract number 17124 for the Senior Meal Program Services. 5B, consider a board and commission's appointment to the TIF Board of Michael Grace. 5E, consider a resolution approving an offer of hotel occupancy tax grant for the fiscal 20-21 budget in the amount of $26,000 to the Duncanville Community Theater to directly enhance and promote tourism in the hotel industry. 5F, consider a resolution approving a 12-month agreement between the City of Duncanville and the Duncanville Chamber of Commerce awarding a hotel occupancy tax grant to the Duncanville Chamber of Commerce located at 300 East Wheatland Road in the amount of $17,760 for fiscal 20-21 to serve as the official Duncanville Visitor Center.
Thank you very much, City Secretary, for keeping track of all the changes that have been made. We now need to, Chair will accept a motion to approve the consent items.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
to approve.
Motion is approved by Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett. Is there a second? Councilmember Vera Cruz has seconded it. City Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Okay, Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Thank you very much, council members. The consent items have been approved. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda, items for individual consideration. Item 5A, consider an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances by repealing Chapter 12, Miscellaneous Offenses and Provisions, Article 20, Sale of Alcohol Beverages in its entirety and replacing it with a new Article 20, Sale of Alcoholic Beverages, and providing a repealing clause, providing a severability clause, providing a savings clause, providing for a penalty of fine not to exceed the sum of $2,000. Turning this over to Assistant Public Works Director Jackie Colton. Ms. Colton.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Gordon and distinguished members of the Duncanville City Council. I am Jacqueline Colton, Assistant Director of Public Works, and I have the distinct privilege of talking with you today regarding the proposed revisions to the Duncanville City Code, Chapter 12, Article 20, Sale of Alcoholic Beverages. Next slide, please. Next slide. In particular, we're proposing revisions to incorporate Council's direction regarding alcohol sales permits for restaurants and to update the ordinance to reflect state law related to alcohol sales. Next slide, please. On our timeline, key dates that I would like to point out include August of 2003, which is when the city first placed into effect ordinance related to sale of alcoholic beverages. In 2015 and 2017, changes were made to allow alcohol sales at special events and at park facilities in conjunction with an approved facility rental. In June of this year, staff discovered that we were not permitting restaurants which sell alcohol. So when we found that out, what we did was, what Director Ramey did is he addressed the council with hat in hand, and he briefed you all for direction because we needed to know exactly what you would have us to do. Next slide. The direction received was for the city to issue alcohol sales permits to restaurants serving alcoholic beverages. However, it would be a $0 permit fee up until October 1st of 2021. And council considered such factors as COVID's impact on restaurant sales and the fact that a lot of restaurants are struggling these days. And so you didn't want to be an undue burden on the restaurants during this time. So, you know, I'm sure that they appreciate the council for making that decision. And then also when asked about the current structure for the alcohol permit fee, which is actually 1/2 of the state fee, staff was directed that changes would not be made at this time, that we would address it at a different date or later date. Now, let's take a look at the proposed revisions. Next slide, please. Section 12-200, we're updating various definitions primarily for consistency with state law. Next slide. Okay, updates to section 12-201, distance to church, school, hospitals. So basically, an establishment serving alcoholic beverages is prohibited within 300 feet of a church, school, or hospital. What we're proposing to add is a provision requiring a 1,000 feet separation between establishments which serve alcohol and schools if the governing body of the public or private school requests the 1,000 foot separation and the city council approves the request. And that's just for consistency with state law.
Quick question, Jackie. I just want to make sure we understand that it's going to be 300 feet unless a request is made to increase it up to 1,000 coming into us from a school. So
that's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Standard is 300 unless there's an exception requested. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, and the council, you know, approves it.
Right, thank you.
Okay, and in addition, you know, when a business which plans to serve alcohol and is located on at least the 5th floor or above of a multi-story building, the vertical distance up the building to the floor where alcohol sales are planned should be taken into consideration when looking at the separation distances. So should I elaborate on that? Okay.
No, but you can, and I don't know if I want to wait or not, but you can, when you start with the 1,000 separation from school, if approved by, if they request, and the council, why are you asking if they request? I'm just wondering why you guys just didn't add that in just for us to approve it versus waiting till the school asked us to do it.
Mr. Cooks, that's because state law requires it.
They're required to the school.
Yes. It's the 1,000 feet can only be activated if the school makes a request for it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's 300 feet. So it's just consistency with state law.
All right. So we could, I think I understand your attorney, that we couldn't do it on our own unless they ask first.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, also another proposed change that you've requested is you would like for restaurants which serve alcohol but have a drive-through or offer curb service to be able to be permitted to sell alcohol. Okay, next slide. Okay, and so in this section, we talk about, you know, the permit fee for restaurants not being assessed until October the 1st of 2021. And then also we're revising the ordinance to provide instructions related to the building inspections department responsibility for issuing the alcohol sales permits. Then we have some new clauses that adds permit fee exemptions for special uses. And basically, these changes were made so that we would be consistent with state law. Next slide, please. Okay, and then also city alcohol permits will be renewed biannually based on the TABC renewal schedule. And also a very important provision that we're adding would give city council the authority to revoke a city alcohol permit for failure of the permit holder to apply with city ordinance, any city ordinance, basically. So if we have an entity that's serving alcohol that is not, you know, complying with the city's ordinances, then it makes it easier for the city to come in and enforce its ordinances and deal with that particular entity. However, you know, of course, there is a, you know, due process, you know, a period of time during which the entity will be given in order to rectify whatever non-compliance or violation exists. Next slide. Okay, here we've just listed the current state and city permit fees so that you could just be familiar or refamiliarized with, you know, the fees that are charged. And then also we provide the financial impact. Currently, the city collects a little over $1,000 every year in alcohol permit fees. Should the restaurant revisions go into effect, that will result in an additional $2,000 to $20,000 increase in this alcohol permit fees that we collect. Next slide, please. Okay, we're updating provisions related to business hours to codify within our ordinance the times, the end times reflected in state law. Next slide. In section 12204 violation, we're simply adding language stating TABC can pursue their own charges, claims, and remedies. Next slide. No, there was no change in the sale of alcohol at special events. Next slide. Okay, implementing the ordinance updates. Staff plans to notify restaurants of the city alcohol permit requirements. That notification will take place probably by January 1st or mid-January. And the reason that we've pushed that to like mid-January is because we're in the process now of implementing a new intergov system, which will be used to permit, you know, the restaurants and all of the other establishments which sell alcohol. And the date that we expect for that new program to go into effect is December. Next slide. So staff recommends approval of the revisions to Chapter 12, Article 20, sale of alcoholic beverages to incorporate direction received from the council and state law provisions. Next slide. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Colton. We understand that because this is a repealing of existing ordinance and incorporating a brand new ordinance, that it was necessary to give us all these details down to the sections of the ordinance itself. So thank you very much for taking us through that and for also responding to what we understand is we weren't doing anything. Now we're going to have in effect the codification of what's necessary to control alcohol within our city. Thank you very much for those details. So if there are any questions from City Council, you know, if not, is there any questions or discussion? If not, I'll accept the motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Cooks and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett. And I think now to make it legal, I got to read this thing. So considering an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances by repealing Chapter 12, miscellaneous offenses and provisions, Article 20, sale of alcoholic beverages in its entirety and replacing it with a new Article 20, sale of alcoholic beverages and providing a repealing clause, providing a severability clause, providing a savings clause, providing for a penalty of fine not to exceed the sum of $2,000. We have a motion to approve and a second on this particular item. So City Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Huh? Oh, it's her birthday?
I'm
Happy
sorry.
birthday to you. Happy birthday. Oh, sorry, y'all. My apology. I did.
Councilmember Veracruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
Happy birthday, I'm for. Sorry, guys.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against? You're muted, ma'am. Councilmember Jameson, for or against? I think we lost her. Councilmember at-large Harvey, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
Sorry, it took me out. I'm for.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Thank you very much. The motion is approved.
Thank you all very much. Cheers.
Thank you to you. Yeah, Cooks, you're a problem child, but that's okay.
I know.
Okay.
Oh, my son, sorry.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Item 5B has been approved by consent. We move on to item 5C. Consider a resolution approving an offer of a hotel occupancy tax grant for fiscal year 2021 budget in the amount of $45,000 to the Great American Shootout to directly enhance and promote tourism and the hotel industry. Ms. James.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. Again, you saw this slide earlier in the briefing session, but maybe for those that are just turning in, tuning in, sorry, I'll highlight just a couple things. Again, GASO is requesting $45,000 to assist them with hosting their event here in Duncanville. Those funds will be used to pay for expenses in essentially those associated with the event, but essentially it's to offset the rental fees for the Duncanville facilities. Again, they did have all but one event last year, and you'll see the event summary, and that's from last year. So there were a number of events that were held prior to COVID, and even the ones that were held afterwards were very successful. And again, I wanted to point out that this is a reimbursement grant, meaning that if for any reason any of those events are canceled, therefore costs would not be incurred and they would not be reimbursed for those costs associated with it. As I said earlier, Mr. Sam Lowe, who is spearheads GASO, is here this evening, and he has a little single-page slide that he would like to go through with you to talk about the different events that are planned for the upcoming year. Does the council have any questions for me at this standpoint?
No, go ahead, Mr. Lowe.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and council members. I think the first thing I'll address, I think it was Council Member Cooks asked a question about basically a fair question of how do we know things are going to go next year? And obviously we're planning and proceeding as if next April through July, our basketball tournaments are back on schedule and life is fairly normal. But I can attest to this. This year, we had to change our schedule, move events due to all the COVID-related issues. And we were at Duncanville Fieldhouse in June with 135 teams, and we were at Duncanville Fieldhouse in August with about 146 teams, and then we were back in September with 75 teams. All those events we got with Craig Brassfield at Duncanville Fieldhouse, worked through restrictions on 50% occupancy, 75% occupancy, depending on the timing, and made it work. So we learned we could do it under restrictions, changed things a little bit, and we were able to get through it this year. Hopefully things are better next year. So we are planning as if March, April, July, September of 2021 are back to normal. Probably not normal, but we did learn that we can continue under the restrictions and make it work. So we did learn that this year. And secondly, as Ms. James noted, all of our money is based on reimbursement of fees. While we were sitting here when this came up, I looked at our contracts for next year. Just at Duncanville Fieldhouse are over $53,000 in rental. We sometimes also use Duncanville, the two gyms at the library, the community center, rec center there. We use Duncanville ISD gyms. I know that's not city owned, but still we use Duncanville ISD gyms and have rentals. So we're already under contract just for the Fieldhouse alone at $53,000. If we don't meet that, if because of these restrictions next year we can't meet those numbers, then I'm sure Ms. James, and when they go through the final numbers, will correct it and pay us accordingly. So as they did this year, we had a reduction due to a couple events being moved or canceled. So we're planning and striving to do it the best we can, and hopefully some degree of normal next year. And if you have any other questions along those lines, fire away.
Mr. Lowe, I'd like to thank you and your staff for continuing to use the Duncanville Fieldhouse for the GASO. It's important to our city to be able to do that, and we're very thankful for looking at the situation and saying we can do this. And so kudos to you and all of our staff, Craig Brassfield at the field house, for finding a way to make this happen. Because I know I had some discussions with Mr. Brassfield in terms of how are we doing social distancing? How are we doing the sanitation? How are we coping with what's being declared to us by the governor and by the county for sanitation requirements? And it worked. It worked. So we know we can handle this as a city, and we're very thankful that you want to continue this. So we hope that things, if we don't go to shelter in place, which is the most dangerous thing that we go to, even if we can stay in the red and the orange, we know that there's a way we can pull this off. So we're thankful for that and appreciate coming forward and pulling this, asking for this money from our funds. Are there any questions from our members of the council?
No, Mark Cooks, Mr. Lowe, thank you again for, number one, hanging out with us this long tonight. I apologize to have you wait so long tonight, but I did want to hear information you share, so thank you very much. It is in District 4, and so I get calls from citizens asking about the number of cars, and so I wanted to be able to hear it from you, where I can echo it as well. But thank you again for your contribution you made to making to our city by bringing a tournament as well. So thank you for staying tonight to share that.
I appreciate it. And as Mayor Gordon said about sanitation and stuff, we hired extra staff and had cleaning crews on site just to address playing the games, wiping bleachers down. So we learned a lot of things, and we made it work, and we feel confident that we can in the future.
Well, of course, as you know, we have a new Popper Brothers over there close to you now, so people have a different place to go eat. So please encourage to use all the restaurants you can in Duncanville. Thanks a lot.
We do.
Yeah. Mr. McBurnett, I noticed you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Cook covered some of what I was going to ask, but I want to thank you, Sam, a Duncanville graduate, for thinking of your hometown and taking care of us as well. So thank you.
Well, class of 91, proud Duncanville Panther, and so I love that I'm able to come back and be part of the community and do our part. So we enjoy it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from our city council? All right, seeing none, the chair will accept a motion to approve item 5C, consider a resolution approving an offer of a hotel occupancy tax grant for fiscal year 2021 budget in the amount of $45,000 to the greater to the directly enhance and promote tourism in the hotel industry. There was a motion by
Mark
and the second by
Emerson.
Okay, all right. So we're moving on, folks. City Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, 4 are against.
4.
Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Anderson, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Cooks, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Jameson, 4 are against.
4.
At-large Councilmember Harvey, 4 are against.
4.
Mayor Gordon, 4 are against.
4. Thank you very much, council, for approving this item 5C. Moving on to item 5D. Consider a resolution approving an offer of a hotel occupancy tax grant for fiscal year 2021 budget in the amount of $6,750 to the Duncanville Noon Lions Club 70th Annual Sandra Meadows Classic. And Mr. Steve Martin would normally present this if he were present, but we're going to take it from Ms. James. Ms. James.
Thank you. Tracy, can you please skip to the last slide too? The other slides, again, just go over state law and what the items have to do to be able to meet state law. Again, just highlighting, as we did earlier for the Sandra Meadows basketball tournament, yes, it has been canceled. However, that's why Mr. Martin is requesting only $6,750. And again, if you see down at the bottom there, That is for the management fees and for maintaining the website and the social media platforms that they do to continue to recruit teams for next year and to continue to keep the basketball world engaged so they don't look for other places to host their events. Last year, you all did award them, the council did $42,000. And just as a note, those funds were 100% reimbursed. And you'll see there for the event summary for last year, I wanted to put that in there as well, that they did have that 3-day event. And you can see the numbers that Mr. Martin there estimated that took place in terms of tourism for Duncanville from this event. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Ms. Jameson, I see your hand.
Yes. I mean, I understand the $750 to get the website and maintain it, but $500 a month to manage it when it didn't happen is odd to me. And I don't know how you attorney, can you help me with how do you judge hotel motel attendees and all that when it didn't happen, and $500 a month for management fees? What receipt do you turn in?
I think what we were looking for, what I would be looking for in this regard would be the time spent maintaining the website, the time spent sending out social media and operating the social media website. So they would have to show that there's commitment of time involved in those activities. That's the way it was presented. That would be what we would look for in their request for receipts. Just so you know, that's what we were looking for. That was what it was explained to us, that they would actually be sending out and making contact with teams and promoting the event through the website and through social media.
And so you turn in hours that you spent, because normally you have someone who manages your website.
Yeah, I think the way that they've presented it here would be confusing, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Martin, but it's my understanding that they would have someone that would actually engage in those activities. And you're right, there's usually a host fee that's paid for that, but the way they presented it, I don't know that it's a separate item. It's part of maintaining the website and the social media platforms, because it has to, that has to be a promotional activity. Otherwise, you are correct, it would not be reimbursable.
Well, it says right here, here's the receipt from the company, KB Media Solutions, $750, website maintenance, updates, graphic design services, and media releases.
And so
for $750.
So that would be for maintaining the website and the social media. Then there would have to be someone connected with the basketball tournament to actually get that information and put it out and promote the activity. Otherwise, it wouldn't be reimbursable.
Yeah, because it didn't happen.
This money being requested is going forward for what may happen with Sandra Meadows basketball tournament on a reimbursable basis, if I understand that correctly, though.
Yeah,
so it's for next year?
Those services, then it would be eligible to be reimbursed. And that's what's in the request for the funding. They still have to justify to Ms. James, who oversees that they actually are engaged in those management fees, and would have to detail what that is in order for them to receive the money. If they could not do that, then they would not get the $500 a month.
Right. This is for fiscal year 2021 going forward. Yes.
Okay. So it's next year.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. What they explained to us, that they'll still have to promote basically for next year, so that next year they shouldn't come back and ask for the same amount of money, maybe for the same activities, because what they're going to do is continue, what they've explained to us is to continue to promote the event for the following year so that they won't have those expenses for 2021. They would have more heads and beds type of reimbursement, not this kind of reimbursement.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. I did not get that before.
Okay. I see Councilmember Harvey, you have your hand up? Yes, please.
Yes, I'd like to move to approve this item as stated.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Councilmember Mac Burnett. No further discussion? City Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Veracruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
4.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
4.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
4.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
4.
Councilmember at-large Harvey, for or against?
4.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
4. Thank you, council, for approving item 5D, a resolution approving an offer of hotel occupancy tax grant for fiscal year 2021 budget in the amount of $6,750 to the Duncanville New Lions Club 70th Annual Sandra Meadows Classic. And 5E and 5F have been approved through consent. It's taking us now to executive session. Let me make sure where we're at now.
Mayor, did you, any questions on the staff presentations first before we go into executive session?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yep, let me go back. Yeah, item 6, staff and board reports. Council, you've been provided the monthly financial report for August, the fire department quarterly report, and the police department quarterly report. Any comments or questions on any of those particular reports? I did want to make a couple of comments just for the record. Looking at the finances, this is for August. We're approaching the end of our fiscal year and we're at 92% of the budget. And our property taxes are at 98.5% of collection. So that's a pretty good percentage to see at this particular point in time. On the fire department, notice that we have 3 vacancies, but there were 4 promotions to Wigington, Underwood, Shaw, and Blanchard. Congratulations to them for their promotions. And the fire department individual of the year, that award was made. And looking at the police report, saw that we have 4 new hires. And thankfully, this now says that we are fully staffed in our police department. So I was very, very glad to see that. We had Officer of the Year, Detective Bird. We had some volunteer individuals, Pamela Sykes and David, Brighton. And Officer Sisk was presented the Presidential Award from the Texas Crime Prevention Association. So great staff, great work, much appreciated by everybody. So that closes item 5G, unless no. That closes item 6, unless anybody has any further comments on either of those reports. Okay, not seeing any. We now need to recess. Got to get
Mayor
all.
Gordon, can you read the caption before you recess?
Okay, will do. Okay, we're going to go into executive session. And under executive session, City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to section 551.072 of the Texas Government Code. Deliberations about real property to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, to wit, real properties generally located south of Wheatland Rd, east of Cedar Ridge, and west of Cockrell Hill. We are recessing City Council at 8:53. City Council members, please leave this and go to the executive session with the council with the link that you've been provided. 6, 7. Okay, I see that we are, well, Patrick is coming on. All right. Let's see. I see. Patrick, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're all here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are all present. Okay, we are reconvening a city council meeting at 9:17. And Item 5G on our agenda, take any necessary action as a result of the executive session. There is no action to be taken. So with that, we are adjourning our city council meeting for October 20th, 2020, timestamp 9:18. Thank you very much, council. Have a good evening.